The flight to Washington, D.C. was supposed to be ordinary. Passengers shuffled down the aisle, tucking carry-ons into overhead bins, searching for their seats. Row 25 was nearly full when a quiet, gray-haired woman slipped into seat 25C. She wore a simple jacket, faded green, a patch on the shoulder, nothing fancy. No one paid much attention. To most people, she was just another passenger. But if you looked closely, her hands told a different story. Small scars across her knuckles, calloused fingers, and a silver bracelet engraved with names only she seemed to understand. As the plane taxied, a young man sitting beside her noticed the patch on her sleeve. "That's military, right?" he asked casually. She smiled faintly. "Used to be," she said. "A long time ago." The engines roared, and the aircraft lifted off into the golden evening sky. Passengers relaxed, flight attendants rolled carts down the aisles, and the world below turned into a sea of clouds. But somewhere high above the Atlantic corridor, something unexpected happened. The captain's calm voice suddenly crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be flying in close proximity to a pair of F-35s today. Nothing to worry about. They're on routine patrol." The young man beside her perked up. "F-35s? Those stealth fighters?" He pressed his face to the window. "Whoa, I think I see one." Outside, cutting through the blue, were two gray jets keeping formation with their plane. The passengers murmured in awe. Phones came out, cameras clicked. But the woman in seat 25C, she sat still, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The young man noticed her expression, calm, distant, almost nostalgic. "You've seen those before, haven't you?" he asked. She smiled faintly again. "Not those exactly. Ours were older, noisier, but the sky feels the same." Moments later, one of the F-35s dipped lower, then pulled up parallel to their plane's left wing. The pilot inside tilted his helmet, a subtle gesture. Then he did something no one expected. He raised his hand in salute. Passengers gasped. The pilot of a U.S. Air Force F-35 was saluting a commercial plane. Why? Cameras were recording. People were whispering. The second jet mirrored the first, dipping its wings in synchronized motion. The woman in 25C stared silently, her eyes glistening. The young man asked softly, "Ma'am, are they saluting you?" She didn't answer immediately. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "Not me, the ones who didn't make it back." The young man froze. His eyes dropped to the bracelet on her wrist, small silver plates engraved with names. 5 names. "You were military?" She nodded. "Marine Corps. I flew medevac missions. Long time ago." At that exact moment, the pilot's voice came over the loudspeaker again. But this time, it wasn't the captain. It was someone else, passenger in seat 25C. "This is Major Carter of the 37th Fighter Squadron. Ma'am, it's an honor to share the sky with you." The cabin fell silent. Every passenger turned toward row 25. The attendants stood frozen mid-aisle. The woman, her name was Major Helen Briggs, covered her mouth, eyes trembling, and no one knew how the pilots knew she was there. But word had spread fast. Her name was on a manifest, and somewhere in the air traffic chatter, a young Air Force officer had recognized it. Major Briggs wasn't just a veteran. She had been one of the first female medevac pilots during Desert Storm, flying into combat zones to evacuate wounded soldiers under heavy fire. Her crew had saved dozens, but on her last mission, her helicopter was shot down. She survived. Her co-pilot and 3 medics didn't. She retired quietly, never speaking of her service, never seeking recognition. And now, 30 years later, in seat 25C, the sky itself remembered her. The passengers began to clap softly, hesitant at first, then louder. Applause filled the cabin. The captain came on again, his voice thick with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a hero aboard our flight today. Major Helen Briggs, United States Marine Corps. We are honored to have you with us." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she shook her head humbly. "I'm no hero," she whispered. "I just did my job." The F-35s held formation for several more minutes, flying alongside as if escorting her through the clouds. Then, with one final salute, they peeled away, vanishing into the sunlight. The young man turned to her, speechless. "I've never seen anything like that." Helen smiled gently. "Neither have I." Hours later, when the plane landed, passengers waited for her to leave first. Some saluted, some cried. Many simply whispered, "Thank you." As she stepped off the jet bridge, a small group was waiting near the gate. 3 Marines in full dress blues, holding a folded flag. One of them stepped forward. "Major Briggs, on behalf of the United States Marine Corps, thank you for your service and sacrifice. Welcome home, ma'am." Her trembling hands accepted the flag. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she looked at them and said, "I wasn't sure anyone remembered." The Marine replied softly, "We always remember." Outside the terminal window, the evening sun painted the clouds in gold, the same color as her tears. Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms anymore. Sometimes they just sit quietly in seat 25C, holding memories the world can't see. That if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Grow for Justice, where we share stories that restore faith, honor, and humanity. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our incredible community around the world.